And we are up and running. This is going to be a fabulous conversation. You know, the funny thing is, people don't know until the Monday morning who my guest is going to be. Sometimes I don't even know, Chief Justice Christensen, but a lot of folks read that you were going to be on the call this morning and have joined us. So I am delighted. I'll be somewhat distracted letting other people in. Our guest today is Chief Justice Susan Christensen, who serves as the Chief Justice of the Iowa Supreme Court. She has spent her career in public service, including years as a trial judge and as presiding judge in juvenile court cases. Known for her plain-spoken, and I might add fun style sometimes, she also has a deep concern for both fairness and humanity in the justice system. She recently delivered her annual State of the Judiciary address, which she focused on the theme of leadership, not as a title, but as action. So I'd like to invite those of you on the call to put any questions in the chat. After Chief Justice Christensen and I chat for a while, we will open it up to questions from you. But I'm going to start right away by welcoming you, Chief Justice Christensen. And if you would, talk a little bit at first about why you picked the theme of leadership for this address.
Sure. Good morning, and I guess now it's afternoon, everyone. I was looking at all the names on here. I don't know everyone, but some names, not only did I grow up with, but even as an adult, I paid attention to what you're doing too. So it's kind of fun being an Iowan and getting to talk to other Iowans. I will assume you guys didn't listen to my speech. Otherwise, if I did, you can hang up. But I chose leadership every year. I do choose one. I try to be one word. Sometimes it ends up being two, but I try to choose a theme every year. If anything, it's kind of a crutch for me. It helps me stay focused as to what should I talk about. My very first speech was during COVID, and I listened to a bunch of other chiefs' former speeches, Katie and Turnus and Laverato and even Reynoldson, McGivern. So I had a good idea of what they were like. And I wrote it. And then, as was customary, it was shared with my colleagues the day before, which killed me because I'm a procrastinator. It killed me to have it pretty much done 24 hours ahead of time. But I did it. And then the night of the governor's speech, which is the night before mine, I heard, with no names in particular, that my colleagues didn't like it. And that was before I gave it. And I was at my hotel, and there's one other, I call it girl judge. And a friend of mine said, she's a woman. You can't call her a girl. Yes, she is. She's a girl judge. Anyway, my colleague said, I haven't read it. I trust you know what you're talking about. Ignore the boys and ignore the noise, and don't you change a word. And so I didn't. And I knew why they didn't like it. I know it's not like everything I watched. I knew it was because I thought I'd be a fraud if I tried to sound like those guys. And so instead, I decided to talk about things that were important to me. And it wasn't memorized, but I certainly had it written, and I practiced it enough to make it seem as if it was mostly from the hip. That's just how I talk. But anyway, and when I was done, the person in particular who was most critical of it said, you humanized us. And I thought, if that isn't a compliment, I may not be writing as intelligently as you want, or being as showboaty as people thought I should be, or as formal as they thought, but I humanized them. I thought, well, I can live with that. So then I quit dispersing it beforehand. Nobody ever gets to see it beforehand other than my legal counsel and our communications guy, who does he fact checks everything I say. If I say a percentage or a number, we can back it up. We get called to the mat all the time, as I'm sure many of you guys know as well. So ever since then, I've continued with that one word theme. Every year before this last year, I've had things to do on the agenda that were support. Everybody in the branch was like, yay, Susie, go, go, go. And they're pushing me across the street to go talk to legislators, and they're excited about what I'm trying to get, whether it be judicial pay raises or whatever it may be. Everybody's all on board with what I want to do. This last year, we had some really, really tough things we had to do that actually, for lack of a better term, pissed off our own people. And that was hard. I always told everyone, I'm from Southwest Iowa. If I still was a judge or a lawyer only practicing in Southwest Iowa, I would agree with you. And I'd say Des Moines, stay out of our lives, stay out of our biz, go away. We're fine. But I don't have that luxury anymore as chief. And when you look at these issues from the perspective of all 99 counties across the state, I know we're doing the right thing. It had to do with class and comp and magistrate modernization. So all year I've been dealing with kind of trying to defend the decisions of the court to our own people. And I thought, man, that's tough. And I wondered, what have some of my predecessors done, whether it be in the judicial branch or other branches? So that's how I came up with leadership. And I thought, gosh, it stinks sometimes having
Yeah.
to make those hard choices. And so I contacted all the living governors. That was wonderful. That was fantastic. I got to speak with them way longer than I thought I would. And I spoke with many different leaders in legislature, both sides of the aisle, both chambers. Um, and then, of course, my own branch. And I focused on Laborado and Turnus since they're both still alive.
Can I
And then I
interrupt you a
thought,
little bit before we
go
get
ahead.
to
No,
the nuts of the speech? Because I'm fascinated by you having a conversation with the former governors. Anything that you can think of that surprised you from those informal sessions?
that broke my heart. He did not choose me for a judgeship many, many years ago. I've been told no 14 times at one time or another for different advancements. And it really was. And that one was the hardest no I ever got because, in my opinion, the other person was woefully qualified. And I knew that he had had Al Gore stay at his house a couple weeks before we went to the governor's office. So I knew I had an uphill battle. But I still thought, oh, he'll do the right thing. And it wasn't me. And for years, I've carried that baggage. So when we were together, he came to my office and I brought it up. He has no recollection of it. I thought that was hilarious. Here I've been carrying this baggage, and he's like, "Oh, really? Did it? Well, what? Anyway, we moved on." So I thought that was funny, and it really made me get over it. But yeah, he doesn't even remember it. And then also, let me think. Governor Branstad, he had just recently gotten that Leadership Iowa Award of some type, and I had heard he wasn't feeling well. So I said, if you can't meet in person, we could Zoom or we can call. And we ended up talking to each other on the phone for probably 45 minutes. Governor Vilsack was in my office for over an hour. It was wonderful. And then probably 45 minutes with Branstad. And if he said it once, I'll bet he said it 3 times. I can't believe that I've got the chief calling me to talk about leadership. And I thought, you can't believe? I mean,
Really?
you're kind of a big deal. Yeah. And so that was humbling to me and it made me wonder, has anybody ever, have the leaders in different branches done that on purpose and gotten together? And then Governor Culver, I just really don't know him that well. I must have been at a different point in my career where I wasn't as involved in stuff going on in Des Moines. I just really didn't know him that well. And we had a lovely talk while he was driving. I think he was down in Florida for probably about 45 minutes again. And that was really nice just to get to know him and to hear what they're doing in the afterlife. That probably was surprising to me to hear how much everybody's doing in the afterlife.
The afterlife. I love it.
Yeah.
Leadership is a fascinating topic, and I've had an up front row seat to watch it in business and in politics, and there are very few people that are true leaders. There are many people who are end up in leadership positions but aren't leaders. They're they're peacemakers at all costs. But you are a leader, and tell me how your leadership skills developed, do you think? Were you born into being a leader? Were you the bossy kid in the neighborhood? I mean, how do you identify yourself as a leader?
I don't think I was, I guess I don't know if I was born that way or not. My mom says whatever you do when you grow up, you should get paid for talking. But other than that, she was the only one that saw that coming. But I think when it happened as a family law lawyer, I was a prosecutor and a family law lawyer. And I think with so many clients, so down in the dumps, and they have the weirdest things going on, the saddest things going on, the most tragic. There's so many horrible situations. And in each and every one of those cases, I was the boss. And I could just see it in their eyes immediately. They loved having somebody, carry that weight for them. And so I think that it might have started incrementally like that, where when we were in the room together, and especially, for example, a wife who maybe has been either emotionally abused or physically abused, or is just in a relationship where there's a total disparity in control. As soon as I jumped in, you could just see the change in the husband, for example, that he no longer could, quote, get to her. He'd have to go through me. So I think it started like that as a lawyer. And then in juvenile court, it's similar. When you have so many families that are suffering, somebody's got to help. There's so many moving parts. So I think it just kind of it grew into that. Um, and I never asked to be chief of this court. I never signed up for it. I mean, how stupid is that? I mean, Laura Bell, I don't know if she's on the call or not,
She is.
but hi, Laura. I'm going to tell my story. You probably heard me tell this before. I became chief on February 24th, I think. And I spoke to the Iowa trial lawyers on the 26th, first time as chief to any big group. And they're kind of a sassy group. They're full of themselves, you know. I never was a member. But anyway, that day between, Laura Bell had put out there, and I hadn't seen it yet. My kids sent it to me, the screenshot of least experienced justice ever becomes chief. And I thought, wow. What? I couldn't say it at the time, but I didn't ask for it. I didn't sign up for it. I won't go into great detail, but our court was kind of in a tough spot. I mean, it was right after Katie died, of course, but also there were a lot of other moving parts going on. And I was asked to serve, and I took probably a month to think about it. And I asked my husband, and I thought I actually kind of was having some regret for leaving the trial court because I love the trial court. And I thought, why would I do even more if I'm just kind of stumbling along here? So anyway, I owned it, Laura. I put that on my PowerPoint, and I said, you know what? The beautiful thing about this article is I can only go up. How can I? So nobody expected me to be chief, and I think that it ended up being, if I was still in the court and not chief, I don't think I'd like it. I've now gotten used to it, and I love working with the whole branch because I get to still work with trial court judges. I see Judge Rice out there, the artist. How are you doing? I love getting to be in the mix, and that's my favorite part of my job is working with them. So I think it was a blessing in disguise that this was thrown on me.
So to recap the main points of your address to the legislature, you talked about judicial workforce pay and stewardship. And as I was re-listening to your speech this morning, I was thinking the points you were making about the difficulty to recruit for some of these positions, the problem with people leaving the profession to move to other states or move to other jobs within public service, they could be applicable to many things, whether it's teachers or healthcare workers in Iowa. How do you think this legislature is going to grapple your requests? And maybe you should do a 60-second wrap on what those requests are in terms of judicial workforce.
Well, as far as the judges, we're asking for a pay raise, and in a nutshell, we have gone 10 years out of 15 with zero. Chief district judges right now make, and usually I have one of my people by my side. Do I have anybody on the call like Megan or anybody? I don't think she's on the call. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think district judges make around 170-ish, 170. If we had gotten just cost of living, and when I was an assistant county attorney, Shelby County had an automatic, every county, a person is every year going to get cost of living. And I whined to my brother, who was the county attorney. I was his assistant. I said, I can't even see it in my paycheck. I can't even see it. But anyway, I realize now the magic of cost of living. If we had gotten cost of living those 10 out of 15 years, just cost of living, a district court judge instead of 170 would be making about 205. That's what you miss out on by those incremental changes, and it compounds itself. So we are definitely hurting. We have had so few applicants. District 8, Southeast Iowa, this past April had 2 applicants for a judgeship, and 2 names go to the governor. So do you even need to have commission for that? I assume they did, just formality. What about when there's only 1? I mean, when there's 2, nobody got to talk about temperament. Nobody got to talk about experience. There was no reason to. They're automatically out. And so I was pushing for, we want cost of living and then some, like 1.5. And I said, we need to start closing that gap of what we've lost, that purchasing power. I've also asked for some, about $1 million in our budget to go towards the compression when we did our class and comp. And we raised a bunch of people up, and it made a huge difference. I didn't give any numbers. I was getting short on time. But for example, July 1st was the effective date of our changes, and 1/4 of our staff, we gave an increase effective July 1. And then from those postings, from then on, if you had 3, 5, 7 applicants for a normal job, by the end of my 22 city tour talking about this class and comp, those numbers were 40, 80. By the time I got to Sioux City, which was one of my last stops, they had like 130 applications for one spot. That was huge. And I think with our IPERS and health insurance, we just needed to get our salary up there, and then hopefully we can hang on to people. But I don't know if the legislature is going to be real keen on that. I mean, how do you pay for these things? With tax money. What have they been doing? Cutting taxes. I mean, Susie says that's great. I love paying less taxes. But Chief Justice Christensen says, oh my God, what are we going to do? So I can never guess. I don't have a crystal ball. I never know what they're going to do.
Yeah. Boy, you've seen the legislature in action, whatever the word is, for up close and personal in this position. Anything surprise you about that? You probably don't want to make a comment about it. Never mind. I withdraw the question, Your Honor.
I told her if somebody asks something I can't answer, I'm not afraid of saying I can't answer that.
Yeah. I figured
like the chat I just saw.
No point in even
interesting, but I won't make a comment. No comment.
Yeah. Right. All right. So you also talked about the indigent defense and public policy. Would you say a few words about that before we get?
Yes, we are in crisis mode. So are some other states, of course, but I don't care about them. I only care about us. We are the lowest paying for contract pay of any state that touches us. Apparently, Illinois is a naughty word with a lot of people across the street, but Illinois, their judges make 80,000 more than we do. 80,000 more. And they also pay their contract lawyers well. The problem with that is we're across the river. I live in Harlan, and there's a lot of lawyers from my neck of the woods that practice in Omaha too. And so the same is true for Eastern Iowa. There's a lot of lawyers that if they don't, they will as soon as they figure out the pay. So we're competing not with just national people. We're competing with realistic states that we're going to lose lawyers to. But I tried to emphasize that these lawyers, they're not schmucks. They are incredibly skilled. When I was a prosecutor, I always thought it was hilarious when somebody get charged with an OWI or something. They'd go spend a ton of money on a guy from Omaha who I've never met, has never done an OWI in Iowa. And he just pled his client straight up, didn't even ask me, doesn't know how I roll. And then you get somebody like Joel Niebaum, who's been a contract lawyer for years. He knows exactly what kind of case. Okay, this one's going to get Susie's attention. This one, there's a problem with the field sobriety test or whatever it may be. So I find that interesting. But these are good lawyers. They are skilled at the areas where they're practicing, and they're saying, I can't afford it. They just can't afford it. And so I used as an example, I hate to always have the skies falling, but Davenport recently threw out a case. The guy had asked for it and qualified, never got a lawyer. 2.5 months later, they dismissed it. And I see that happening more and more. I don't know what else it's going to take to get the attention of the legislature. And it's not my budget, but we're affected by it. And it's their constitutional responsibility. I don't understand that, but it's not a suggestion.
So, okay. So speaking of constitutional responsibility, I realize you don't have anything to do with the federal government and legislation, et cetera, et cetera. But inside the rotunda, there was something else going on, and it was related to immigration and ICE. There's a growing public anxiety about the enforcement that ICE is incorporating, especially in Minnesota and in Iowa. From the judiciary's perspective, what does due process require when someone appears in an Iowa courtroom, regardless of immigration status?
So
how's that?
Rephrase that. What is the question you're asking me?
Well, due process. What role should or shouldn't state courts play when federal immigration enforcement intersects with local criminal proceedings?
That's a hot topic.
I know.
I think, and I know people would love to know. I remember when I was up for this job, somebody says, "What's your position on abortion?" I thought, wouldn't you love to know?
Yeah.
And if I say it out loud, then if there's anything that comes my way, I have to recuse myself. And who would have thought immigration would ever come our way? But as we know, There was a statute passed that went to the feds and they disposed of it. So I'm scared to say anything that someday someone will quote me and say she can't sit on a case like that. So
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I'm getting a text from Megan that she is Steve Davis on the call?
Uh, I don't know, but let's see. Steve Davis, I don't
He
see.
must be. He
Steve,
must be. Steve tells me you have a salary question. Okay, what's my salary question?
who has a salary question?
Somebody must in the box here.
Oh,
Oh,
looking at
regarding
okay. So there people. I'm going to get to the chat in a just a very short
okay.
bit, but
I'll leave that up to you. I won't monitor it.
okay, all right. The one of the other important points you made in your state of the judiciary was to talk about addiction among lawyers and judges. And there are some brave people that you called upon who stood up, who battled addiction. I thought that was absolutely wonderful and fascinating. Why did you tackle that topic of all things?
Because here we are begging for judges to get paid more and to get more people interested in becoming a judge. We're trying to get contract lawyers to be paid more, and the work that they're doing because they are not paid well and they are overburdened. I hate to say it, but that's kind of the stuff that pushes people into either substance misuse or whatever it may be, or depression, anxiety, whatever. So I'm kind of like forcing the issue. We are in such trouble, and then to ignore. And by the way, it's got a human component to it too.
Yeah.
And even if everyone was paid what they're supposed to, I'm not disparaging anybody else's career, but it's hard. It's really hard to always be placed with troubles, problems, crisis. And God forbid you have one of your own and you try to still help others and nobody turns the tables to you and says, how about you? What about you? What do you want to unburden? So I think that's true for a lot of lawyers. I just wanted to enunciate. And I know personally, there have been some situations where I wished I'd have said something sooner.
Yeah.
I have a great sniffer. There's a public defender when I was a prosecutor who always told his clients, do not go near Susie if you've been drinking. Don't do it because they'd be in the courtroom and I'm going to nail you on it. But anyway, I can tell from personalities and I can tell from behaviors. I can tell from someone being disheveled when they normally aren't. And it's hard to say something. It really is. So I think by trying to put it out there as, hey, we're owning this. A judge, a lawyer, somebody who appears before us, these kids who grew up, the kids that I focus on every year, they whether they're using substances or not, almost all of them grew up in homes of substance abuse. So it surrounds us. I think drugs and alcohol and mental health are in 90, if not more, percent of the cases that we deal with.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's
And I
a,
don't mean of the lawyers. And so my point is the lawyers have to cope somehow. And I think they're coping inappropriately. So I was just trying to show you're not alone and let's find some ways to get you some help.
one last question before I go to the participants. And by the way, we have a great group on this morning. We have former legislators, we have other members of the Iowa Writers Collaborative, so we will not lack for conversation. But in years past, when you look at your State of the Judiciary speeches, can you think of some examples of where what you said did lead to reform?
Last year, do you remember when I talked about the talking wall? Maybe not everybody's seen it,
Yep.
but young youth who used to be in the system and are now adults, they are amazing resources to learn. What have we done well? What have we screwed up? What could we do better? Anyway, they write these post-it notes, and so I mentioned, and I was not allowed to say. And Steve's on the phone. I don't think he was one of them, but Megan's like, you can't repeat some of these. Some of these are just they're just too tough. And I couldn't give some examples of what I've seen in juvenile court because it is so confidential. But I felt like that was the only way I could get people to be passionate about it, is to really hear what's going on. So anyway, I gave some examples of stuff, and one of them, I'm not going to say what it was, but the post-it note was so disgusting as to what is not provided for youth that I knew if I said it out loud, it would be explosive. So instead, I contacted Kelly Garcia of HHS and I said, hey, Kelly, you want to address this? Because otherwise, I'm going to from the podium. And she said, please let me. And she immediately addressed it. So I never had to say that one. But the other ones have had an impact. I had a legislator come to see me Wednesday after the talk down at Cookies, and she was horrified to hear about the hug thing. And she wonders, have we gone too far with rules about people, counselors touching someone? Is there a way we can say, hey, do you mind if I give you a hug? But that is heartbreaking. So I do think those kind of messages make a difference. And I think finally, on the judge pay, after this is my sixth speech, finally, I think that they will admit we're in a pickle. They just don't want to pay the money to fix it. But even before, I had one legislator say, stop right there. He gave me the hand. Stop right there. You make enough. That's what he said.
Hmm.
You make enough.
Hmm.
Ah, so
Okay.
how do you deal with that?
So
And so,
back up a second because you referenced the cookies and you referenced the hugs without context. So if people aren't going to go back and listen to what you had to say.
after my speech, we always go down to the historic courtroom and have cookies and water and coffee, I think, maybe. And so when I go down there, it's a great opportunity. The legislators are all there. And I have Caitlin, our person who goes with me, always said legislative stuff, be right next to me because she knows all their names and what their committees are. And otherwise, I get inundated with comments and I want to hold people to it. So if Laura Bellin tells me, oh, you know that, I'm going to try and make everything happen that you asked for. On behalf of the Senate, you can count on me. I want to hold you to it, but I don't know your name. It's like, and so Caitlin's over there furtively taking notes, and I'm going to hold him to it. So that's cookie time. And then during my closing thoughts, where I was just trying to remind people that kids are really important to me. And I didn't focus so much this year on kids as I normally do, but I certainly didn't want to be silent on it. And so I brought up the Youth Justice Council, and these are kids who have lived experience in our system and are now adults. And so I asked, can you tell me something about the talking wall this year? And they said the new question this year was, I'm going to quote it to you, so I don't want to misstate it. Got my notes right here. She said, what is one thing you need that you've been quietly hoping someone would notice? So it's not a want, it's a need. These are actual kids still in the system. They're in shelters, detention. What do you need that you are quietly hoping somebody will notice? And the number one answer from 500 youth from every Iowa shelter, group home, and detention center was a hug. A hug. And I said, it doesn't take money, doesn't take legislation. We are missing the boat on some stuff. I mean, 232 is the chapter for juvenile justice. It got completely rewritten by the Department of Human Services without ever consulting with us. Of all people, I tried my best before it became in stone to get some stuff fixed, but it would have been nice to be involved from the ground up. If you're going to talk about the entire juvenile chapter, we kind of have some skin in the game. We'd like to talk about that. So anyway, here's an example of something that we try so hard to do all that stuff, and we're missing some really fundamental stuff about kids, or youth,
Absolutely.
as they like to be called, youth.
Okay, we have some great people on the call. I'm going to first start with the members of the Iowa Writers Collaborative, and that would be Chuck Offenberger, Reka Basu, and Laura Bellin has her hand up. So, Laura, you go for it.
I need to first of all respond. The last time you were on one of these calls, I was watching, but I couldn't say anything because I didn't want to say anything because we had a case pending before the Iowa Supreme Court on the interlocutory appeal. So I was like, I'm not going to say anything. And then you brought up that post and I couldn't say anything. So the backstory on that post is that there had been all this intrigue in 2019 about the Chief Justice and how long the Chief Justice's term would be. And possibly some lobbying that went on when that bill, and that was something that I extensively covered in 2019. And then Chief Justice Katie died tragically, unexpectedly in 2019. And the expectation of everybody I knew was that a different person was going to be the next Chief Justice, somebody who had been on the court longer. And so then when they announced that you had been elected, I was like, what happened there? And I didn't have anything on the record about why the person who was my expectation. It was very surprising because normally it would be someone who had been one of the longer tenured people on the court. And so
And it
I just
normally
want
would
to
be.
make clear to everybody, my post did not say unqualified. It said less experienced because it was accurate that the previous chief justices had been people who had had longer tenure on the
Oh,
court.
yeah.
And
Laura,
it was not what I was expecting.
we all think it's funny. Do you have a question for her?
Yes, I do. I wanted to give some context on the indigent defense because I have been following the legislative discussions of this issue. The House Republicans are on board with spending more. It's really the Senate Republicans. So if
That's
anybody
true.
is wondering, like, how can they get, and judicial pay the same way. So it's really like, if you have a Republican senator you can talk to, that would be the most helpful thing that you can do. But my question was, when did that happen? When did the HHS rewrite the juvenile justice thing? And
It's
did I,
probably been 3 years now.
and it was without input from the judicial branch?
We found out about it. They were all done with it. It was going to LSA for rewrite. I mean, that's when I found out about it. And actually, that's when Kelly and I bonded because I let her have it. I said, I feel like you had a birthday party and didn't invite me. And on this issue, I'm your best friend.
That's wild.
Yeah. And so they did a little bit of backtracking. And the sad thing is, I mean, that's an executive branch. They're going to get what they want. Do you know how hard it is to change something instead of being involved ground up and creating it together? It would
Wow.
have been really nice.
I just can't
Yeah.
believe that they didn't involve any stakeholders from the judicial branch. So I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly.
We're informed when it was just about done.
That's
Okay, Laura.
wild. Okay, thanks.
Feel free to come back in. Let's go to Chuck and then Lyle and then Reka.
Chief Justice Christensen, great to see you, and thanks for talking to us today. As a fellow Southwest Iowan, you come from deep roots in the legal system, don't you? I mean, aren't there generations of lawyers on both sides of your family? Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah, there are both sides. My mom's brother is John Logan. He was a public defender in Cedar Rapids for many years.
And then how about on your father's side?
My grandpa, my dad's dad, my paternal grandpa, was one of those where you got to just study for the bar. He was a clerk of court in Shelby County, and then he studied for the bar, and he passed the bar, and then he went to war, and then he came back and actually practiced law. And then my dad, Jerry Larson, was on the court for Supreme Court for 30 years. By the way, that's my connection to Julie, and her husband Dick is my dad. Dick lived in Harlan and was editor of our lovely newspaper for many years. And so, and then my brother Jeff is a lawyer. My brother Dave is a lawyer. 3 of my nephews are lawyers. I've got 5 kids and none of my own. I don't know what happened. So we got a bunch of them.
That's great. Any other follow-up, Chuck?
No, not now. Go ahead. Thank you.
All right, Reka and then Lyle.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here, Justice Christensen. So I'm not going to ask you about your views on abortion, but I think they're going to factor into this question, at least from a constitutional point of view. Actually, my question has to do with your views about judicial retention elections, right? So after in 2010, the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage, there was some pushback from anti-abortion activists who wanted to get rid of the justices who were up for retention elections and successfully did that because of their votes for same-sex marriage. So this time in 2024, the Supreme Court actually set the clock back 50 years by doing away with abortions after 6 weeks. And there was a movement by some reproductive rights supporters to turn back one of the people who was up for, or the only person who was up for retention election right after that, was Justice David May. And that generated quite a bit of controversy as to whether something like this, should lead to, whether a difference of opinion or perspective on a ruling should lead to defeating someone or a campaign to defeat someone, versus whether it's just a pro forma thing that unless someone has done something egregious outside of court or whatever, that's the only time you would vote against them. I'd really like to know your opinions, because some people who are very opposed to the 2010 votes against judicial retention were actually supporting a vote against David May for similar reasons, I guess you could argue.
Yeah, the tables were turned. I firmly believe in our judicial nominating commission process. And that's why for the whole time I've been on the court, I have been trying to defend why we need to have judges around the table, There are some people who would like to just have the whole thing be legislative, just let them pick who they want and have them be Senate confirmation or whatever. I am a firm believer in the commission, and I think when the commission is done the right way, then you get a judge in place who deserves to be there and is worthy. Then retention serves a purpose of I don't think it should be for one ruling. I mean, I have some rulings that maybe they were in the dissent category, but still, if they had been in the majority, I'm sure some people wouldn't have liked me either. But I can't tell you how many cases I've ruled on, and I think I have a good sense of what's right and what's wrong. And to have a difference of opinion result in losing your job because of one case, I don't think that's what retention is for. And I think, like I said, that's why I go back one more step to the Judicial Nominating Commission to make sure we have good people in place. And then the retention should serve globally. How have they done? Not just one case. I mean, if you have somebody who's a horrible human being, doesn't have the temperament, has awful rulings, maybe is late with all of his rulings, treats people terrible consistently, and not just one case, that's different. Is that really what we anticipated when we put him on the bench? I think everybody probably knows people like that either change or we didn't see it. But I don't know if I can say any more than that, but I think the Judicial Nominating Commission has got to be fiercely protected. By the way, there's continued legislation by attempts to remove the judge from the commission. They already were successful in doing it on the appellate level, and they're trying to do it at the trial court level. I looked into, we have about 130 state commissions, and if 100 what? One? I can't hear what she's saying. Anyway, we have about 130 commissions, and everyone, like if you have plumbers, if you're going to have plumbing regulations, you have a plumbing commission, and there's going to be a plumber sitting around the table, maybe more than one, hairdressers, chiropractors, whatever it may be. If they remove judges from the Judicial Nominating Commission at the district level, like they did appellate, we are the only commission in the entire state that doesn't have that plumber sitting around the table. That to me is just trying to punish us. That's just, I don't understand the logic. I have suggested you don't have to have us be in charge. When they don't like the person who's leading it, I'm like, well, that's statutory. Change the statute. The statute says the most senior judge in each district shall lead the commission. Hey, believe you me, there's some people that are better at doing it than others. I don't disagree. I mean, I don't care who, it could be a judge from another district. I don't care who, but don't remove a judge from the district, from that commission. And that, I hope, would keep the bench at the level it needs to be. And then the retention, the purpose of the retention is globally, how have they done? Not for one case or one issue.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Reka. Lyle Muller, another member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative, and then we'll go to you, Bryce.
Well, I apologize for the noise that might be in the background and also my background in general, but I am coming to you live from Real America Costco. And while I wait for tires to get changed on my car, the question I have is kind of related to the last one, and it deals with the rhetoric that we've heard from President Trump about activist judges. And we've certainly heard from, for example, John Roberts saying that that's not helpful with the credibility of courts. Do you see that spilling into state courts?
I know this is being recorded and going to play all over the place. I think I'm going to defer on that one. I know I'm doing what I think is the right thing to do by looking at the Constitution, reading the statutes, finding credit. You know, when I was a trial court judge, assessing the credibility of people before me and making good decisions. What that gets categorized as what kind of judge I am, I don't put words on it. The fabric of who I am is the kind of judge I am too. And so I guess I don't want to comment on the fabric of other judges and what categories and titles people give them.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. Wow. Thank you. Bryce Oakley.
Good afternoon, Madam Chief Justice. I'm going to ask you an institutional question. I put it in the chat box, so I'm going to read it from there. And so it's not a political question. For many years, Iowa's governor sent the judicial branch budget through the governor's office, and the governor would include without change that judicial budget would go to the legislature. In recent years, however, the governor has modified that, and it became therefore the governor's budget, and in my view made it politicized the judicial branch budget. My question is, what are the institutional effects or the implications when lobbying the legislature when you're working off of the governor's version of your?
No, we're not. That's how I handle it. I am kind of silly about it. I own it. I say, you know what? She may have changed it. I don't know what her numbers are. Look at mine. I continue. I just say we're operating from mine. I don't like that at all that got changed. So I pretend like it didn't. And I think they all know. They know now, no matter what got tweaked, that ain't what I'm asking for. I'm asking for this. I call it my wish list. And once that wish list gets established, this is the percentage of increase we want for judges. This is the staff increase we want. Maybe we have some sort of legislation we're asking for, and we commit it, and it's in paper. And I kind of got the feeling when I became chief that there was a lack of trust between our branch and some of the legislators. And so I promised them, I call it my wish list. I said, it's my wish list and it will not change. And if you give me what I want, you have my word. This is how we're going to spend it. Now, if you give me more than I'm asking for, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go, but that'd be awesome. That's never happened. And if you give me less than what I'm asking for, then I got to go back to my colleagues and we have to decide what's priority. But anyway, when I talk to legislators, I ignore it. I don't even look at it. I refuse to look at it because I'm never going to say, yeah, we're okay with that. We're not. I'm asking for what we need, not what I want. This is what we need.
Well, but if I may follow up with that, I lobbied the legislature for 20 years, and I've been a member of the bar since 61. And my first job was as an assistant AG and so forth. And but I've seen that budget be politicized because it's, oh, I've got to vote against my governor if I don't support certain budget items. And that's the reason I asked the question, because I find it to be absolutely unconscionable for a governor to, as a separate branch, to take another branch's budget and in effect own their own numbers as governor. And I've seen that be a real problem for justices in the past years. And I go back to Chief Justice Garfield. So anyway, I
Well,
appreciate your dilemma.
yeah, well, I appreciate that. And it used to be passed through, and to be honest with you, I still treat it like it is. But yeah, I don't like it either, but I've learned I can't do anything about it. I just have to work my way around it.
Okay, we have some really experienced people on this call with the judicial system and the legislature. Ralph Rosenberg, do you have a comment or a question? Former legislator.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chief Justice. I'm a former legislator, and when I used to chair your Appropriations Committee, I did not appear before you when I was in the legislature. Just like Bryce, we worked with a few decades ago. I had Justice Reynolds and Justice McGivern, and it was a pleasure. We had bipartisan efforts, nonpartisan efforts. I regret today's legislature was not like that back then. I want to offer one solution and then one question, if you can answer it. In the mid 1990s, I helped create a nonpartisan Institute for Public Leadership in Iowa. And we had Judge McGivern's blessings. We were represented by David Boyd. I had governors. I had Republican legislators, Democratic legislators, and we created joint training of emerging leaders from all three branches of government, so people would have the ability not just to sit next to someone from a different branch, but to learn about issues of different branches and issues, things like diversity, dispute resolution, ethics. And we were very successful. We just ran out of money. Some people wanted to spend money elsewhere. But I suggest you might want to consider it. I think people would already look highly of you, Madam Chief Justice, but I think we should resurrect this Institute for Public Leadership, because you mentioned some of the things you mentioned indicated the lack of knowledge of the branch, of your branch. And I'm a retired lawyer, almost 50 years, but I continue to see it. That's a free suggestion.
And I like that. Megan is my right hand. I know Steve's on the phone on the Zoom call, so I'm going to ask Steve to pass that on to Megan, and they can put their heads together and figure out what we can do.
People know how to, but my question, if you can comment on this, I was really disappointed with Big Law doing the anticipatory obedience to President Trump by bending its knee and just handing money to Trump. I don't know, how would you feel if a judge, if a governor, whether it was Reynolds or a Democrat, went to law firms in Iowa and said, we would like to have these major contributions from you, or we're going to investigate you? And that's really, and I don't know, how do you feel about the president putting pressure? Or if you can't answer that, what do you think about Big Law with this anticipatory obedience and just giving money to President Trump's campaigns? If you can comment.
You're right. I can't comment on it, but let me tell you, Big Law in general, who am I? I am Susie Larson Christensen from Harlan, Iowa, town of 5,000. I live on the square. The sun is beating. I can see the courthouse across the street from me. I have no intention of ever moving. I would never, ever, ever consider working for Big Law. So I think personally, you can figure out what I think about Big Law. I think a lot of lawyers in Big Law carry somebody else's briefcase for years. I loved going to court. I went to court my first month of being a lawyer, practicing all by myself, and didn't have phone to text anybody either. And so that's my personal opinion of Big Law. I tell every one of my clerks, every year I get a new law clerk, and my mantra, and they all now repeat it back to me. And it's at the end of every speech I ever give that has a PowerPoint. Don't let your job own your soul. I think that those younger lawyers who go into something like that, man, they have to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week.
Crazy.
And then when they finally decide they want to take it down a notch, they're like, no, we like you on high generating numbers. So my point is that's that. Regarding the other one, I just wanted to tell you, when I was in New York City visiting my sister-in-law, they went to a ball game and I chose to go watch a trial because we're weirdos, aren't we? And so I went to a trial in Queens, and my sister-in-law dropped me off at any courthouse. There's many of them. I went into the desk. I said, are there any trials going on? Because we can have no trials for, they looked at me like, you idiot. Of course there's trials going on. Okay, can I go to one? And so I watched it, and I got to talking with a lawyer outside in the hall every time we got kicked out because of the jury stuff. And he explained to me that he never appears before this judge in particular because he can't compete with the amount of money that's been given to that judge. And he doesn't think it'd be fair to his clients.
Right.
And so I couldn't even imagine a world like that. So that's just my own personal experience. That was shocking to me in New York City. And I was thankful that our judges are not elected.
Right. Me too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pussyfooted around it.
Yeah, good job. Good job. Okay, any other questions, comments? Let's see, Laura, you feel free. You're certainly attuned to the legislature and judicial branch.
Oh, I thought that in your speech, you really gave people an idea of the pressures, as you were talking about, the pressures of being a judge or a lawyer. But I guess I was wondering if you would elaborate a little bit for this group of what are things about being a judge, particularly a district court judge, that members of the public just don't really understand.
First of all, I'll start with the Supreme Court. I think the thing I love doing the most is working with the chief judges across the state and the trial courts. I love that. The thing I like doing the least is the legislative aspect because I can't control it. I'm so used to, I don't use a gavel, but I can make things happen. And not over there. That's frustrating to me. As a trial court judge, I think I loved every single day. I didn't have to deal with politics. I just dealt with people. I think what frustrated me was lawyers not being prepared because, in my opinion, people pay good money and they've taken time off of work, and we don't have a lot of time to waste. And so I got to be known as that judge. And so it actually, when you know you're going to appear before Judge Christensen, and you better have had a conversation with your client, you better have your exhibits marked because we're not going to waste the jury's time or anyone else, then guess what? They all stepped up. Everybody started doing it. As long as they knew I was the one they were going to have, they did it. So I think that was interesting for me, and I thought we need to do that consistently. I'm concerned about the clientele. I want to show them the best of our practice, and sometimes I think we're getting kind of sloppy. So I think that was my job as a judge, is to help lawyers step up. Come on, let's give the people what they need. But you couldn't make that stuff up. I've got so many stories with my court reporter of stuff you can't make up, life, and I miss that. Now, for example, tomorrow we have a case that involves, or maybe it's the next day, a case up in Dickinson County about a property thing, and that. Yes, it's going to be important, and someday it's going to be cited. And when somebody else gets property dedicated, they'll remember that case and they'll cite it. Yeah, as a part of that, but I like it when I watch the family that I'm helping and I miss that aspect, or the criminal who gets convicted and the victim testified, and to see that up close and personal and be a part of that, I miss. And I think that was the most important work that I did, was helping people get through our system in a professional way, a courteous way. But I'm not afraid to, to say what needs to be done, but I miss it.
Okay. Bryce, you had another question, comment?
Yes, I'm going to go back and take Ralph Rosenberg's question and come at it from a different point of view that I think you can respond to. One of the jobs I had as an assistant AG many years ago is I worked with Chief Justice Garfield on the bar examination. That was when it was written out in my hand. It was all essays. And the Chief Justice took a lot of interest in what were the questions going to be. They were submitted by the bar examiners, and we put that together and we give the test and so forth, unlike what they do now. But it involved the interest in the integrity of the bar as a whole is an important thing. People respect for the law is generally reflected in their experience with it. And to your point about lawyers being prepared and all, it is one of those. Can you describe how the court administer? You get questions, you get people that think they ought to be disbarred and so forth. Can you talk about the responsibility of the Supreme Court in its oversight of the bar as a whole?
Okay, thanks,
Yeah.
Bryce.
I am very proud of the fact that we do have oversight. I'm backing up more because otherwise I get the sun right in my face. Otherwise, if we don't keep the guardrails up for our own profession, the legislature will swoop in and start doing it for us. So we have got to be vigilant at making sure we address bad judges, bad lawyers, questionable things. And so I think we're one of the few states that does it the way we do, with a full opinion. We have a case tomorrow that's oral argument on an attorney disciplinary. That's not too often, it's oral argument. But we take those very seriously. We get cited a lot. Our cases get cited because there's just not a lot of states that do what we do. They hand it off to some administrative aspect of their branch. So we take it very seriously. And I think that's another reason I probably talked about substance abuse and mental health, is because that's a lot of what we see for attorney disciplinary matters.
Yep.
And so we take it very seriously. There's 7 of us. When I first got started, the majority of the court was very hard on anybody who steals money, and they still are. No, big no, don't steal money. But I sensed a lack of being upset for example, when a lawyer sleeps with his client, or in exchange for attorney's fees. If you just do me a little. Anyway, there were a few of those cases when I first got started, and I wanted to punch their ticket. And they're like, oh, there was, but blah blah. I'm like, are you kidding me? When you steal money, there's something called the client security fund. I used to call it crooked lawyer fund, but client security fund is kind of like an insurance to make us as a profession try to make some people whole who may have gotten bowled over by their lawyer. We can make them whole. Money is money. If someone stole $10,000 from a client, we can pay them $10,000 back and they're whole. Yeah, it's too bad that happened. But if somebody gets abused or whatever it may be, what do we do? How do we fix that? What can we give them? And so I have, for my 7 years on the court, they know if a case like that comes up, oh, here we go. We're going to hear from Susie again. Yes, you are. That to me is the ultimate taking advantage. Yes, I don't appreciate anybody having sticky fingers, but I'm in a position of authority when I'm with a client. I'm in charge and everybody knows it. And what I say often has to do with determining very important aspects of their life. They know they don't want to go into the courtroom without me. I have great leverage. And they're also many times very, very distraught, not making the best decisions anyway. And so I feel honored that we get to manage that. And I think as a court, we do a good job. We all come at it from different angles. And I just hope that my position on some of these issues starts to become the norm.
Thank you so much. Leslie Carpenter, I saw you in the gallery and when I was reviewing the speech. And so you were there when she made this address. Welcome to the call. Do you have a question or a comment?
I do. Thank you so much. Thank you, first of all, for being so supportive of problem-solving courts. I'm a mental health advocate. I think you probably know that I got the first assisted outpatient treatment program going in Johnson County. One of the disturbing trends that we're noticing across the state is the increased criminalization of people with severe mental illnesses. For instance, over the last 2 years, they raised the penalties for someone who assaults a health care worker or anybody associated with those things. And anecdotally, what we're hearing from county attorneys across the state is an increase in the number of people with mental illnesses getting criminally charged for things that they're doing while they're in psychosis. And I'm wondering if you're aware of that at the state level, and if you have any comments about that. And the other part is, are you supportive of developing more diversion programs, more criminal mental health courts, more civil mental health courts to get people treatment instead of punishment for being sick?
Of course, I'm supportive of that, but it costs money. Everything costs money. And as you know, we are struggling for just the fundamentals. So of course, if money were no issue, more family treatment courts. I was judge of a family treatment court. I'm a huge advocate of specialty courts. It's all about money. Everything has to be staffed. You have to have different days of the week. If you're doing that, then that means somebody else has to handle your docket. Does that mean you need more judges for your district? It's all about money, and it's kind of complicated. And by the way, I don't think that issue is new. I think since the day I began as a prosecutor and then became a juvenile judge, then a district judge, and still the criminal system and the mental health world collide, sometimes when they should, oftentimes when they should not. I sat on a committee. I was the only judge. I don't even think there were any lawyers on it. It was an executive one put together by the governor. It was Governor Branstad at the time. It's right before I became a district court judge. And it was all about mental health. And you might have been on it too, Leslie. I can't remember. But anyway, I was excited about what they were talking about, but they were talking grassroots. Let's get them at the beginning. And I'm like, you know what? I have nothing to do with grassroots. We only deal with mental health on fire. Friday afternoons about 4:15, a judge will get an application for a commitment. I mean, we don't ever get an application for, hey, I think someone's maybe just got a little anxiety. Could we talk about it? Heck no. You got to be on fire and threatening to kill someone. Does that make it right? No. But that's the level the judiciary gets involved. So I am very supportive of your efforts because they will absolutely impact the judicial branch. But until it's a fire, we have no dog in the fight. And by fire, I mean a case gets filed. That's the only way I can get involved as a judge, whether it's trial court or appellate court, is a case number. And nobody wants a case number on those. Nobody. So, but I don't doubt for a moment that you're correct. And I applaud you for the services you're providing. Keep going.
Thank you so much. My gosh, this hour has flown by. You've done I'm so grateful to you for accepting this invitation, because too few citizens of Iowa have an opportunity to really have this kind of dialogue, and your openness and candor for the most part has been so appreciated.
Most part.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I love it. I told you I would say no when I had to.
I
By
know,
the way,
no.
Artist had a question. I don't want to ignore Artist. She's my friend.
Yes, Artist, did you have a question?
Yeah, she was going to say something.
Well, I was going to say thank you, Susie, and I call you Susie because we go back many decades. The Girls Judge Club.
Yeah, you're not offended by being called a girl either.
Right. I just wanted to thank you for continuing to ask for more funding. I know it's really a drag. Everybody says, oh, the judiciary always want more money. They want more money. That won't solve the problems. Well, yes, it will solve many problems.
Yeah.
And we used to get a whole lot of attorneys, top-notch attorneys would want to become judges. And now they can't afford to do that. And I just wanted to thank you for hanging in there and continuing to explain that our judges need more money. Thank you.
I want more lawyers to become legislators too. I think there used to be more lawyer legislators than there are now. I wish there were more.
Right.
As I'm hearing this conversation, the dialogue between the two of you, I think, how in the world does the judicial system, without being able to hire a lobbying firm to represent them, and yet you have people who are running for the legislature who need campaign contributions, and oftentimes the money talks, and the people who support the candidates the most end up being hurt the most. How do you lobby? How do you get the word out to citizens other than coming on this podcast? But how do you get the word out to citizens that these things matter?
Her name is Caitlin Jarzen. She's our governmental affairs person.
Okay.
She is amazing. And actually, I should have probably had her on this call today. But if anybody would ever ask me to talk, like oftentimes after my speech, I'm asked to go and give the dog and pony show on what we're asking for. And if I can't have Caitlin or Megan by my side, I probably will cancel because she is in the weeds and she knows all the legislators. She knows what bills are pending. She knows what we should probably get involved with, what we can probably look the other way. She's amazing. If you haven't met her, I love her.
Okay, great. So you are open to going around the state and talking if your schedule allows? Is that an invitation you're making here?
I have a hard time telling you no, Julie.
I like that. Well, thank you. And let's do this again. Really so much appreciate your time. What's your takeaway from the conversation? Anything in
Mine?
Yeah.
It's refreshing. I everything I said, I was imagining it being replayed and somebody writing a story about it, going in the newspaper, legislators talking about it. So it's kind of like giving my speech again because I know who my audience is. I know I'm being recorded. So I tiptoed around things. I hope I didn't offend anybody by not answering something, but I've learned. I don't want to have to recuse myself.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Thank you.
Some people would love it if I would have to. Especially if I don't agree with you. Yeah, say something on it so we can kick you off.
Well, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service.
It was nice to talk to everybody.
Thank you for being on this call. Take care.
You bet. Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye.